just to let you know that we are moving in the timing of God. You know, some people may call it different things, but it is divine providence. And because we understand divine providence, we operate, of course, under that particular umbrella. But what I wanted to start with is, again, we want to thank everybody who's out. We want to thank many of our co-sponsors that's out there in the audience that came up to the plate. We want to thank our supporters and different ones who threw in their hat and said that we're with you, and the well wishes. We appreciate it, and most importantly, we thank you just being here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read a piece that I had gotten from the League of Black Women, and some of you all may know about the League of Black Women, Miss Sandra Finley, and she's supposed to be here, but I don't know if she'll make it. She's coming from a good distance. But I'm going to start off with a statement, because we do have a statement of purpose. And one of the things is that I'll read what is in her actual white paper that she had. It's pertaining to Black women economics. And so I'm going to read, it says, Black women want candidates to address our agenda, to make sincere commitments to policy changes that lift our common economic status from last place, with the least Black women standing in the vortex at the convergence of racism and sexism, subject to the combined ill effects of generalized prejudice and discrimination against both African Americans and women. Historically excluded from the ranks of the wealthy, power elites whose interests are systematically promoted, Black women and their interests have been systematically overlooked, bypassed, and ignored. Never designed with us in mind, the United States economic policy has habitually served to marginalize, temporize, or reverse the economic gains of Black women. Past exclusion notwithstanding, Black women are energized to act on our own behalf, utilizing the political apparatus available to us. The effort to insert our voice in natural political dialogue asserts not only a demand for attention to our predicament, but a demand for change. The Black women's economic agenda puts forth a platform for political engagement. Black women want candidates and policymakers to speak directly to us, referencing our conditions, our aspirations, and our agenda. Now, that's the first component from the League of Black Women. Now, for the National Black Agenda, I want to set the record clear. There is a National Black Agenda. And that National Black Agenda, if anyone would like to take the time, they can find it online. It's the National Black Agenda Consortium, and it has been written on the backs of what had transpired back with the Gary National Convention and the local organizing committee, that's with the Minister Louis Farrakhan, in addition to other pieces, the Niagara Movement and everything. So it's a holistic agenda that addresses many of the things, because our conditions have not really changed that much. And so as a result of that, we have the same agenda, and it's a living, breathing document. So I wanted to share that with you, so that anytime anyone else ever says there is no Black agenda, you will know of a truth that there is. And if someone cares to look it up, they will be able to find it. And in addition to that, I will certainly encourage people to look it up, because it there outlines solutions. It outlines so many different things that we've already taken the time to do to be able to lay that out. So I just wanted to share that with you. Now, in continuance with this, I'm going to read some of the things that we wrote from the Black Agenda. In order for Black people of African descent, to move forward, we must understand the need for collective purpose. We are unified as one body, one people, and one spirit. As we move forward, our collective consciousness, epistemology, and will must align itself in order to reconstruct our destiny. The Black Agenda is birthed out of the necessity of a powerful people to reclaim its freedom from the oppression of those who wish to do us harm. With one voice, we say no more. And as we move onward to the struggle, we are on the cusp of great victory. As we know, Black people continue to suffer from the ill treatments of injustices throughout this country. through mass incarceration, discriminatory practices, malfeasant behaviors, unjust and unfair laws, and a continuum of racial oppression and subjugation. As the foundation of the family, women are in a unique position to direct the trajectory of family and community development. The intersectional struggles of Black women must be analyzed, acknowledged, addressed, and respected inside the continuous struggle for Black liberation. Today, as we embark upon the new path and direction, we acknowledge that we are on the cusp of change. We have and will continue to proclaim with one voice the prolific words of our ancestors and great Black women of faith. The great one that we're talking about today is Fannie Lou Hamer, on which this has been established. And that, as she said in one of her quotes, she said, "It's time for America to get it right." And then she also said, "I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired." And so that's why we commend each one of you for being out, because even with the snow, and some thought we were going to change or cancel it, but we said, no, we're not closing and canceling anything. That we were going to go forth because divine providence demands it to be so. Amen. Today, we honor the memory and legacy of this great sister as divine providence demands. So what I'm going to ask you all to do, if we can stand to our feet in honor of Fannie Lou Hamer. And in addition, we want to stand for the countless Black women, both at home and abroad. This be us. Let's applaud. And so what I wanted to do at this present time, I wanted to introduce our moderator, and she, of course, will continue on with the flow of everything. She has the order and all of that. And certainly we want to say, I'm going to preface this by saying this, everybody, you know, here at this church, we do things decently and in order. So having said that, it means that, you know, we're going to flow in the right spirit. And we want to make sure that everybody has that understanding, because that's what we do here. And so we want to be an example to our children, our young people, those who are here, that we know how to do when we come out. So I'm just saying that, you know, because that is important for us to know, and I've set the tone, so I pray everybody understands that. So without further ado, we're going to introduce Attorney Rose Joshua. And many of you know Attorney Rose Joshua, but she is certainly going to conduct the moderating of this process. And of course, we are going to abide by the governance that she gives us. So if we can applaud for her at this time, we appreciate it. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
You know, the moderator actually sets the tone of how everything is going to go. And so when I do this job, you know, I have many jobs. The moderator job is sometimes a very hard job. But if everyone knows what the lay of the land is and what the rules are, we can have a great forum. Outside of my job as a moderator, I am also the president of the Chicago Southside NAACP, one of the largest and the oldest civil rights organization in the United States, and I would say in the world. And when I was asked to do this task, you know, I couldn't do it by myself. I got people. And I would be remiss if I didn't thank the people who helped me do what I was asked to do. The first vice president of the NAACP Chicago Southside, Brenda Sharif. She made sure that I'm going to do my job right as moderator. And also, I have the third vice president of the NAACP Chicago Southside, who are going to ask to the candidates the first set of questions. Third vice president, Pam Sangdon, Esquire. I also have an individual who I asked, because I said, and the candidates was asking me, well, are you going to have a timer? Are you going to? Yes. Okay, and so we have our member and a member of our Criminal Justice Committee, Stan Freeman, and also, raise your hand, I got to see you, all right? And then you have also Mr. Ivan Williamson from the church, right here, a member of the church. Now, I am not going to say what the timekeeper's job is because I asked the first vice president, so y'all know what to do, right? All right then. And also, I have also briefed the candidates and that we're going to start off with opening statements, which will be for 2 minutes, and then we're going to close, and they're going to do a closing, and that will be for 1 minute. Now, there is no one here from the Kennedy camp. And so I have this little bag, and we're going to draw lots. This bag. All right.
I'm number one.
Two. Okay, Daniel. Okay, you're number one. I guess.
Come up.
Wait just 1 second.
Right after
Okay, our questions are going to be in rotation. So if candidate Hardiman is the first question that will be posed to you, then you will be the third one on the next round. I think they call that rotation, yeah. Okay. All right, so let's get started. Okay. So, Mr. Hardiman, you're going to be first with your opening statement, and inclusive in your opening statement, I want you to answer why are you running for this office, what makes you the best candidate for this office, and do you support the National Black Agenda, and what does that look like to you?
Okay. Come over there.
Yes, you can.
All right, here we go. All right. Well, first and foremost, everybody, I'm T.O. Hardiman. I'm running for governor again. This is my second run for governor. I ran in 2014, secured close to 30% of the state vote, winning 30 counties downstate. And I'm going to make this statement right now, and I don't want nobody to take this personal. I am the black agenda. T.O. Hardiman is the black agenda, okay? I just have to be honest with you. I am the black agenda, hands down. Everything everybody's talking about in this race for governor, I've lived it personally. Now, I grew up on 79th and Cottage Grove, Henry Horner Projects. I've experienced racism, discrimination, the mass exodus of black folks leaving out of Chicago. When I first got down here today, I wanted to make commentary about some of the candidates here, but I'm not going to do that. You know why? Because we have to learn how to take the higher road as a people. What I'm concerned about is our people in our communities right now. We have 1.7 million people living in poverty. Gun violence is at an all-time high in our community, and we have to do something about it to get the job done. Anybody can come to our community and divide our people whenever they get ready to. I'm asking all of our people to unify around my campaign. We have enough people in the black community to elect me the first black governor ever in the state of Illinois. Okay, ever. And this is not, I don't want you to vote for me just because I'm black. I'm qualified to run the state. Look at what we got in the state right now. We got a guy that's governor right now telling me he's not in charge. And he has the audacity to run again for another 4 years not to be in charge. I'm asking my people to get past their isms and schisms with T.O. Hardiman and vote for me to become the first black governor. My running mate, her name is Patricia Avery. She's a former director of the NAACP in Champaign-Urbana. She's a former Champaign commissioner with 30 years of experience. We can run the state. I salute the black queens like Juliana Stratton that's running. I salute Dr. Wallace. She's running. These are black queens running for lieutenant governor. Even though she's with JB, she's still one of our sisters. But I'm asking for your vote for T.O. Hardeman. Nobody's going to champion the cause for our people like myself. Let me just get back to my platform now, okay? I had to get that out. Now, hear me clearly. When it comes down to our platform, I support the progressive tax. I plan to reduce gun violence in Chicago by 50%. Once I become the governor, we plan to increase the minimum wage to $15 an hour. That's a living wage. Have I gone over 2 minutes?
Okay, I need for you to raise them up high.
Oh, I didn't go 2 minutes yet, okay? But anyway,
Yes.
all right. I did?
Yeah.
Look, all right, listen. That's all.
Candidate Pritzker.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks so much, Dr. Frazier, and thanks to all of you for being here today. I'm running for governor because everything that we care about is under siege right now by that racist misogynist in the White House and by his local silent partner, Governor Bruce Rauner. Now, I grew up in a home where my parents taught me to fight for social and economic justice and for equality and inclusion. And that's why I've spent my life fighting for those values. There are 230,000 kids, most of them African American, who get school breakfast because I helped to expand President Obama's No Kid Hungry program here in the state of Illinois. And thousands of kids in the African American community who get quality preschool and quality childcare because for more than 20 years I've been a national advocate on their behalf. And I created hundreds of jobs here on the west and south sides of Chicago and in the state of Illinois for African Americans. And I endowed the Center on Wrongful Convictions so that people who are convicted unjustly have someone who represents them and gets them out. Now, thank you. I think you should have a governor with real experience getting big things done because we've got some massive challenges here in the state of Illinois, and we need to stand up for the national black agenda. Now, that means that we need quality schools. And I mean for every child, no matter what zip code they live in, no matter what the color of their skin, no matter what their income level is. And we need universal health care in this state. Yes, we do. And we need to create jobs, for goodness sakes, right here in these communities. So I want to address one thing before I finish. I know there's not much time, but just one last thing. Many of you know that I had a conversation almost 10 years ago with the former governor talking about who I thought should replace Barack Obama in his Senate seat. And I really believed that the person that I've known for so many years, 35 years or more, Secretary of State Jesse White, would be a great United States Senator. I didn't execute that conversation well. My intentions were good, but I didn't speak of it well. I didn't use the right words. Thank you. Just give me one moment, if I may. But I just want to say that when I make a mistake, I own up to that mistake. But I hope that a lifetime of work standing up with the African American community to do things with you, to raise people up, that will ultimately make your judgment clear. Thank you very much.
Candidate Bliss.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here in this beautiful, sacred space. My name's Daniel Biss. I'm State Senator of the 9th District. I live up in Evanston with my wife, Karen, our 2 kids, Elliot and Theodore, who attend our neighborhood public school. Here's why I'm running for governor. I think this is a unique moment in our history for us to finally build a just society. I think this is a unique moment in our history for the state of Illinois to stop turning its back on the black community, on people of color, on poor people, for the state of Illinois to stop ignoring the middle class and the working poor, for the state of Illinois to stop being run by a few people, wealthy, connected, close to the halls of power, on behalf of those same people, and instead to build a state of Illinois that works for the rest of us. It's time for Illinois to get it right. I think that after decades of watching a system that disinvests in neighborhoods, that closes down schools, after decades of watching a system that has allowed the wealthy not to pay their share, and therefore that leaves us with a state government that cannot afford what our communities need, I think this is a unique moment. A unique moment because of what Bruce Rauner has done to the state over the course of the last 3 years that has woken so many of us up. A unique moment because of what Donald Trump is doing across the country that has created this moment of activism and hunger for change. A unique moment for us to stop accepting what we have been told is impossible for year after year and instead to build a new political movement to change what's possible. I'm Daniel Biss. I'm running for governor to build that movement with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, candidates. I believe that Dr. Frazier recognized some elected officials that were here in the room, and I recognize a candidate who's running for the Attorney General's office, candidate Sharon Fairley. I also see in the room Keith Bailey, the committeeman of the 20th Ward. Kevin. Okay. Don't. At least I got the last name right. Okay, now we're going to go on into the questions. And the questions actually are divided into 5 areas. In about 2010, the Illinois State Legislature recognized that there were 5 areas where Black people, African American, where there are disparities. And this is how the questions are going to go. You know, sometimes our political and our voting rights are violated. We have problems with the justice system. This is public safety and criminal justice. We also have disparities in health and environmental justice. We also have disparities in education. We also have disparities in economic development. And what I say is, and even though in the past we looked at these issues as separate, but we need to start coming up with proposals that will synergize holistically all of these areas. So the first area that we are going to talk about is political and voting rights. And the person who's going to ask those questions is Pam Saindon, Esquire.
Thank you, President Joshua. First questions to the candidates will be regarding redistricting. As you know, every 10 years, the legislative maps are redrawn to reflect the census data. What is your opinion regarding the current redistricting process in Illinois? Could you explain to our audience a little bit about what redistricting is, why you think it works in the current process or doesn't work, and what you would do differently? Who's first?
Okay, the first set of questions will go, the first person is J.B. Pritzker. First person that will answer the question. Then Daniel Bliss, and then
Biss. No, Biss.
Okay, Biss.
Yes.
And then
Bliss is fine.
thank you, and candidate Hardeman. Yes.
Thank you. So you all know better than I do that. I'm sorry, there's a mic. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Verizon commercial. You all know better than I do that people died for our right to vote. And we have got to stand up for that right. And in 2016, we saw all across the country that the Republicans tried to implement voter ID laws. You know the voter ID laws, and you know what they mean when they say voter ID laws. They mean they want to stop black and brown people from voting. So we have got to uphold our laws in the state of Illinois and keep those laws out. Now, I funded lawsuits to fight against those voter ID laws in 2015, 2016. We won in some places and we lost in others. But here in the state of Illinois, the right to vote is sacrosanct. And we need to make sure that we're standing up for that right in every community. That, to me, means making it more accessible, not less accessible. I think we should have mail voting. Today you've got absentee voting, but we need mail voting. It needs to be easy, really easy to vote. And people cannot be turned away. And I'm proud that my running mate, in fact, introduced a bill the other day to allow people who've been recently incarcerated to have the right to vote.
Thank you, Mr. Pritzker. Next is Mr. Biss. If you wouldn't mind following up regarding the redistricting and drawing of the lines of the legislature.
Right, you bet. We need to treat the right to vote like the sacred right that it is, and that means a whole lot of things around the laws that we passed recently that I've fought for and around further legislation. For example, I think that people who are currently incarcerated are still human, they're still citizens, and therefore they deserve the right to vote as well, which only exists in 2 states right now. But when it comes to redistricting, let me tell you, the redistricting system we have right now does not work. Across the country, we've seen Republicans gerrymander states for their political advantage, and that is suppress the voices of African Americans, of Latinos, of poor people, and of progressives in general. And yet here in Illinois, we're supposed to pretend that that same kind of practice isn't a problem because right now, in the short term, it's helping Democrats. Guess what? A politically motivated system where politicians in power can decide how the maps are drawn, even if it's helping us today, it could hurt us tomorrow. And that's why I've been fighting for a fair redistricting system that protects the rights of minority communities and geographic communities, but it takes the politics out of the map drawing so our democracy is reflective of what people want, not what politicians are asking for.
The right to vote is very important, and we support the right to vote on all levels. I've been a champion for that cause my entire career, redistricting communities, and that's the reason why our African-American communities still receive, we're on the low end of the totem pole when it comes down to resources, because we allow a lot of these people in power to redistrict our communities. So we're totally against gerrymandering here in the state of Illinois, and that's another reason why we believe in term limits. We have to get rid of some of these officials that have been in office too long, because what they're doing, they're playing to the powers that be. And as your governor, I plan to take the bull by the horn and address this like never before, because we have to protect the 99.9% of the working class and poor people here in Illinois. And as your governor, I plan to make total changes within redistricting and here in Illinois to make sure every vote counts. When it comes down to voting rights, matter of fact, I'm not going to get to preaching about that, but everybody knows the story. My ancestors fought hard for us to have voting rights, and that's why we need to take advantage of our voting right now and vote for T.O. Hardiman and Patricia Amy for governor and lieutenant governor. Thank you.
Thank you. To follow up on your statements regarding prisoners and voting, which is a little bit different than the question of redistricting and drawing of the map lines. If I may, gerrymandering, if some of you don't know, is when the legislators draw the line in such a way as they're choosing their voters as opposed to the voters choosing their representatives. In House Bill 0205, it requires the Secretary of State to prepare redistricting data to reflect the incarcerated persons at their residential address rather than the address of the facility in which the person is incarcerated. What is your position on this bill? And I believe we would start with Mr. Biss.
You guys, this is so important. Here's how the system works now. Neighborhoods are victims of disinvestment. Dollars get pulled out of neighborhoods. That creates economic despair. That leads to higher levels of crime. More people are incarcerated, which then tears the neighborhood apart. And then when someone's incarcerated, they're incarcerated in a prison that's far away, and the census counts them there and not in the neighborhood they came from and that means more government dollars pulled out of the same neighborhood, which makes the problem worse, and it's a spiral of disinvestment. So this bill is important. I support the bill. One of the first debates I ever saw in the Illinois House of Representatives was a debate on this bill, and I could not believe the racist language we heard on the House floor. I could not believe the abject, obvious racism that was acceptable apparently to some in the Illinois Capitol. It's time to pass that bill, and it's time to change the culture in Springfield.
Thank you. Mr. Hardeman.
Hardeman and Avery, we too support that particular bill. You know, I've done a lot of work with returning citizens. I hired over 300 ex-offenders and returning citizens when I used to run ceasefire. I have returning citizens on my staff right now, Brother Tyrone Muhammad, Brother Joby Taylor out of Champaign-Urbana. And I want to take out a moment to acknowledge Clyde McNamore, President of Black Lives Matter in Lake County. We're working to make sure that when people are released from prison, they secure all their voting rights. We cannot keep playing with that. Once you do your time, that's behind you. It's time for us to move forward. That's why I'm also a professor in the field of restorative justice right now, an adjunct professor, because we have to restore the entire community. So I support that.
Thank you, Mr. Hardeman. Mr. Pritzker.
So if we have more compact districts in redistricting, so remember that the Supreme Court has ruled that we have to preserve and should preserve the minority districts across the state of Illinois. That is sacrosanct. But if we drew the lines in a more compact way, there would be more people of color elected to the state legislature and elected to the United States Congress. We need to make sure that we're standing up for the ability of minority communities to elect their own representatives and making sure that we maximize, through this bill, we're going to make sure that we maximize the way the census is counted so that in those districts we aren't divesting and instead we're investing.
Thank you, Mr. Pritzker. I'll be asking one more question. Moving away from redistricting and voting, I believe there's a general consensus that there's some changes that could be made to the Illinois Constitution. Every 20 years, voters are automatically asked about holding a constitutional convention. In 2008, voters turned down this opportunity. Would you be in favor of a resolution to hold a convention prior to the next vote in 2028? Mr. Hardeman.
I would definitely be in favor of holding a convention because everybody keeps talking about the progressive tax in Illinois. In order to push forward the progressive tax, we're going to have to open up the Constitution anyway to make that a reality. So we support the progressive tax, so I'm definitely in favor of it, and I'll keep it at that.
Thank you, Mr. Hardeman. Mr. Pritzker.
I favor a progressive income tax too and believe that we need a constitutional amendment in order to get it done. The problem is if you have a constitutional convention, all of the right-wing crazies come out. And they have the ability to make changes too to the Constitution. I think instead what we need to do is make sure that we elect a majority, a supermajority, in our House and Senate that agree with me about a progressive income tax and making sure that we're electing those officials who will make sure that we get the supermajority that's required to get the kind of constitutional amendment that we need to have. I also think, and I just want to make this clear, we have got to have legislative leadership term limits in this state. I want to make sure you all know that the problem is not that people get elected to office or re-elected to office, but that people serve in leadership for too long.
Thank you, Mr. Pritzker. Mr. Viss.
Here's how a constitutional convention works. We elect delegates to be part of that constitutional convention. They're elected from the Illinois Senate district, and then they get to go and write a new constitution. If you like what the Illinois legislature's been coming up with, you're going to love the constitutional convention. But if you're concerned about what the Illinois legislature's been coming up with, you ought to be concerned about a constitutional convention. And it's true, we need a progressive income tax. And when I'm governor, we're going to enact that by putting that right on the ballot as a referendum without going to a constitutional convention, which can also be done, and I believe is the easiest way to get there. And I oppose the constitutional convention because guess what? Just a few years ago, we amended the Constitution to put in a strong voting rights plan. That's in the Illinois Constitution. I would not want to have a new constitutional convention and risk that being done away with. There's too much good in our Constitution to have that kind of risk. What we need is to fix what's wrong and keep what's right.
Thank you. Thank you, Attorney Sandin. Our next set of questions will come from organizations that have sponsored this event. And would the representatives of the organizations stand, please? You have questions?
Yes. The ones from the audience?
No, organization.
Oh, organizational questions.
Are there any organizational questions? No, then we will take questions from the audience. Do we have any questions from the audience? Okay.
Wait, before you continue, there are cards here. People were asked if they would put their questions on the card, and so that's what we have been asking people to do. I don't know if you were asking.
Okay, so while we're going to be handing out the cards to you, and on the next round, you will get the opportunity to, your questions will be asked. In the meantime, we are going to move forward, and I'm going to ask.
Yeah, you have some. It's coming.
Okay. Well,
Come on.
what is this organization?
Is it on? Yes, it's on. Tell your organization.
Is it on?
Yes, it's on. Okay.
My name is Doris Lewis, and I'm with the local organization. My name is Doris Lewis, and I'm a member of the local organizing committee. And this question is for all of the candidates. For more than 20 years, the mayor of Chicago has had the power to appoint not only the CEOs of the Chicago Public Schools, but also the entire board that governs it. Other than Chicago, every school district in Illinois has an elected school board, as do more than 95% nationwide. But in 1995, as a reform strategy, state lawmakers passed legislation that gave greater power to, that time, Richard Daley. Now we have Rahm Emanuel. This has been a nightmare for the black community because we have no control over our schools, not even any control to keep them from being closed down. So if you are elected as governor of the state of Illinois, and legislation is introduced to repeal the 1995 legislation, will you support it, and will you have the courage to sign the bill? And lastly, I'd like to know your opinion on reparations.
Yes, this question would be directed to candidate Teal first, then candidate Pritzker, and then candidate Biss. I got it right.
I think the latter part of the question about reparations, right?
Answer the first part.
That's the first part, okay. I'm totally in agreement with an elected school board, and I would fight to repeal that particular legislation to make sure we have an elected school board here in Chicago. That's number one. That was your question, right?
No.
Unless you want to expound on it a little bit more.
The legislation that was passed in
Right, but-
gave the mayor greater power
Right.
over the school system. So if that legislation is introduced to repeal that law, that legislation,
Right.
would you support it and would you sign it?
Totally, I would support that immediately. So you brought up the question of reparations as well. So I trace my roots to a slave plantation in Louisiana. So I'm the candidate up here that really has a vested interest in reparations, totally. And I've been fighting for reparations before I decided to run for governor. My ancestors picked cotton for 18 hours a day, with their backs bent over, bowing down to the so-called masters back then. I actually told my running mate I wasn't going to go that deep anymore, but since you asked the question, yes, I'll support reparations. I'm going to make that one of our number one priorities here in the state for our people. All right? Yes.
Well,
What, Go
Just
ahead.
being extra polite. So thank you. So thank you for the question, Doris. And I want you to know, first of all, that I would support repeal, and I will support an elected school board here in the city of Chicago. We have got to get rid of this appointed school board. Now, we also need, I mean, to be clear, we have to put in place a moratorium on new charter schools. Because we need to make sure that dollars and cents are going into the public schools here in the state and not diverted. And you know that Governor Rauner diverted $75 million to private, basically tax credits for people. And that's not right. We need a massive investment in our public education system. And in particular, we need massive investment here, and you're talking about reparations, in the African American community. I was the first candidate to come up with a plan to bring dollars into the community to help people start businesses, to give people the opportunity to expand the creation of capital, profits, and to hire people here in the African American community.
Well, I strongly support an elected school board. I actually want to introduce someone who's just joined us, my running mate, Dr. Representative Leticia Wallace, State Representative from Rockford. And Leticia and I both have kids in public schools outside of Chicago. And here's how it works. People run for school board in our districts, and we get to ask them what they stand for and how they want to run the school district, and then we vote for the people we agree with, and then the school district does what the community wants, unlike what's happening in Chicago. That's why we both, in the legislature, are fighting for legislation to have an elected school board. If we don't get that done before I become governor, I will sign that bill. As for reparations, of course I support reparations. If we want to be honest about the ugly history that this country was partially built on, the history of slavery, then we better do something about it, and that's what reparations are for.
Okay. The next set of questions for the candidates will be number 2, which is candidate Pritzker, and then candidate Biss, and then candidate Hardeman. And the question is?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Reverend Doris Green. I'm the CEO of Men and Women in Prison Ministries, and I've been doing prison ministry work for over 30 years. And I wouldn't take anything for the journey. It's been powerful and it's been great. But my question is, I want to read something before I get to the question, and it's called the Institution and Facility Administration Statute. It says, in the event that a person requires medical care and treatment at a place other than the institution or facility, that person may be removed, therefore, from conditions described by the Department of Corrections. The department shall require the committed person receiving medical or dental service on a non-emergency basis to pay a $5 co-payment to the Illinois Department of Corrections for each visit for mental and dental service. That is your statute. That's the statute. That's your law, the DOC. I understand because we work at my agency with lots of people coming back from prison with medical conditions. Good prison health is good community health. We got to understand that. If they're coming home sick and dying, that's because the care inside has not been proper. My question is if your statute says that they only have to pay $5 when they're being removed from the institution out to specialized care, why are they charging people in prison for having a dental treatment or getting medical pills from a doctor inside the institution? Would you stop that policy that's taking place right now in the Illinois Department of Corrections? That's my question. It needs to stop. And your law says it shouldn't be done, and it's being done.
Like so many things that are going on in the Department of Corrections, that too is wrong.
It is.
We not only need to reform that, but we also need to make sure that we're providing many other services, especially as people are returning as people are going to be getting out, and they will have served their time. So making sure that there is education and training available to people, making sure that their health is taken care of before they get out, and making sure that as they return, there are real job opportunities available, that is fundamentally important. And we have, Juliana and I, introduced a criminal justice reform plan that includes just that, and that helps people get jobs when they get home, back to the communities that they came from, that there are real opportunities available to them that should not have on their record the black mark, the box checked, right? We need to ban the box so that people are not kept out of jobs once they've done their time. They shouldn't do their time for the rest of their lives.
Thank you. Thank you.
The answer to that question is yes. That's wrong, and we've got to change it. Let's talk about what happens in our criminal justice system today. It is full of little ways and big ways that we are criminalizing poverty. That we are, as a society in our criminal justice system, nickeling and diming people, adding costs, adding fees, and eventually turning the non-payment of those fees into a new crime. Give an example. We passed a good bill about sealing of records last year, but those records can't be sealed if a person has fees and fines that they haven't been able to pay, which means you can't get a job because you can't get a job and can't pay your fees. Give another example. Right now, today, it's illegal for the state of Illinois. Check this out. It's legal for the state of Illinois to sue returned citizens to recover the cost of incarceration. You do your time, you come back home, and the state sues you as if you were in a hotel. I passed legislation to stop that, and Bruce Rauner vetoed that bill. So we've got a lot of work to do, and Letisa and I have the boldest criminal justice reform platform in this campaign, a platform that stops the nickeling and diming of people and builds a system based on restoration.
Thank you.
Yes, just to answer your question, when it comes down to inmates paying the $5 copay, we plan to bring that to an end immediately. Some of my work dealing with the criminal justice system, I partnered with former state representative Eddie Watson before he passed away to make sure we got Tams prison shut down. I visited Menard Penitentiary to check on the inmates down there on a regular basis, and we've been doing this work forever. So, you know, my background speaks for itself when it comes to criminal justice reform, but we'll bring into that immediately. I just want to put that out there. Thank you.
The next question. Marijuana is traveling towards legalization, taxation, and general consumption while we still have people locked up for nonviolent weed charges. What plans do you have for current inmates facing charges or serving time? Okay, we have Mr. Biss first, candidate Hardiman second, and then candidate Pritzker. Go ahead.
I support the legalization of the recreational use of cannabis. And there's people who say we ought to do it for revenue reasons, and listen, the state could use the money, but here's why we really ought to do it. It's about racial justice. I represent on the North Shore New Trier High School. And when an 18-year-old at New Trier High School is found with a joint, what do y'all think happens to them? It's a trick question. No one knows, because they've never even tried to catch someone. They just don't bother enforcing it. And yet in black and brown communities, it's a whole different situation. It changes the trajectory of young people's lives. It's time to do away with the system and legalize the recreational use of cannabis. Now, great question. Once you do that, there's a huge backlog of people who are incarcerated under the old rules, and there's only one person who can do something about it, that's the governor. I am going to be aggressive and robust about using the governor's commutation powers, not just to have a forward-looking criminal justice reform policy, but to fix the mistakes of the past.
Thank you.
Okay, on behalf of Hardiman Maybe, we also plan to decriminalize small amounts of recreational uses marijuana and commute the sentences of people that are locked up for marijuana crimes statewide. I think that's fair. That's totally fair. So we have a plan on our website. You can look at our 2020 plan. which represents a perfect vision to move the state of Illinois forward. And that's what we also would like to do there, because too many people of color, not just African American people, you got white people locked up, Hispanic people. This race is about all of Illinois. I plan to be all inclusive. We need all votes. I just want to put that out there. So we have a plan to address that, and that's my answer for you. All right.
Thank you. Well, let me say that although many of us that are running agree, and I do too, that we need to legalize recreational marijuana. The man who didn't show up today, Chris Kennedy, actually disagrees with us. And I think it's important to point out that, you know, he thinks there should be more studying, more contemplation about it. There's been plenty of study. We need to legalize marijuana in this state for racial justice, just as Senator Biss says, for racial justice, and for safety, frankly. And then finally, and this is very important, yes, there's a lot of revenue that the state will get by legalizing marijuana, $350 to $700 million of revenue that could go into the schools. But there also needs to be racial justice around how the licenses are distributed for the dispensaries and production facilities that are needed. And that should be inclusive of the African American community who has been the target of the war on drugs.
Thank you. Our next question will come from the audience.
Okay, thank you. My name is Denise Hetherington, and I have worked with the local organizing committee and also 10 times 10 to win. And before I ask my question, I do want to make a comment that we have many people, many groups, many races of people in this city, but no one has suffered the oppression that Black people in this city have suffered. Neighborhoods are being gentrified. We don't own businesses in our community. Everybody else comes here and is able to get all kinds of benefits. And so when we start to talk about minorities and when we start to talk about being inclusive, Black people are always left out. So when we say Black, we don't want to say minority, we want to say Black, and we want to stay focused on what you're going to do for Black people in this city. My question is to Mr. Biss and Mr. Pritzker. Mr. Biss, you wrote a law that slashed pension benefits for teachers, nurses, and state workers that was ruled unconstitutional by the court. And Mr. Pritzker, you and your wife, and what I've read, and your family and brother, each gave $10,000 to a political action committee to support that law. And in turn, the teachers, nurses, and other state workers who would have been impacted, who have been impacted negatively by this law and this intention that you put forward. So why should we, the Black community, support either of you after such a move?
It's an important question. And I've been direct with people. And I've learned from that. Let me explain why. I got to the legislature in 2011. There was huge debt. There was a big pension debt problem. I was supportive of a progressive income tax to ask the wealthy to pay their share and fund our priorities, and we got told that there aren't the votes for that, it's politically impossible. Instead, we've got to choose between either making changes to pensions or else making further cuts to services. And I was too quick to fall for that false choice. And I acknowledge that. And I own that. The right thing to do would have been to say, hold on, we know what's right. Let's not accept someone else's answer for what's politically possible. Let's change what's politically possible. And I've learned that lesson. And I've conducted myself in that way since that time. I think that's the governor we need. Someone who's willing to fight, to build a movement to change what's politically possible. And I'm proud to have been endorsed by the National Nurses United, a union of nurses who've seen that I've learned that lesson and have seen the bold progressive agenda that I've been fighting for in the legislature.
The only thing I want to add is that another reason I would like you all to take a serious look at my campaign is I don't have nothing to do with any of that mess. All right, nothing. And let me explain. When it comes down to the Black agenda, you're looking at the Black agenda. When it comes down to economic development in our communities, we have a plan with the progressive tax, House Bill 453, which is the financial transaction tax, and then legalizing small amounts of recreational marijuana, that can bring in together about $9 billion of new revenue, and we're going to use that money to help build our community. The reason the black community is failing right now because we're too divided. We are not unified. I'm asking the entire black community to unify around my campaign, and let's make history in Illinois by getting somebody in office that's going to really do our bidding for us and carry the torch all the way, all the way. That's something we have to do as a people. See, anybody can come in our community and drop money bags around and divide our people. That's what's going on now. You have individuals getting paid, but they're not looking out for the collective bargaining power. That's what's happening. Okay? A vote for me is a vote for serious change.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right?
So let me begin by saying that, yes, I supported there's a political action committee that was created back in 2010, I believe, and I was asked by some Democrats to give to it because what I thought they were doing, and this is 2 years before Senator Biss introduced his bill to take 450,000 people's pensions away, I thought they were doing was, and that's what I was told, is that they were going to figure out a way to pay for the pensions. Now, here we are in 2018, and they're not ready to pay for the pensions. In fact, we have a governor and a legislature that's talking about maybe not paying for the pensions. So I have stood up and said, we must pay the pensions. And by the way, the courts have ruled, and we are going to pay for the pensions. So the real question is, can you get the job done? And I have put a plan out and suggested a plan that would work to pay for our pensions. Now, I want you to know I'm very proud to have the support of labor unions all across this state. And it's in part because, I am standing up to make sure that workers don't lose their pensions in this state. It's not right, it's not fair, it's a moral obligation of the state to step up for our teachers, for our nurses, and I will do that as governor.
Thank you. Thank you. Our next question coming up is on veterans. But I'd like to say that when we figured this out in terms of the time that we have for questioning, there were 16 questions. We've done 8, so we have 8 more to go. What is your detailed plan to address the state's neglect of our veterans? So this will be candidate Hardeman, candidate Pritzker, and candidate Biss.
I'll make this brief. When it comes down to veterans, my entire family is family full of veterans. My son's a member of the National Guard. My grandfather fought in World War II, and the list goes on. My uncle's fought in the Vietnam War. We recognize in the state of Illinois we have about 5,000 homeless veterans. I've supported the Wounded Warriors Project, and I'm definitely in favor of supporting more programs for veterans all the way, because there's no way in the world that a person fights for our country and they end up in limbo here in Illinois. Just like Illinois right now, we want to be a sanctuary state, we want to make sure we look out for our veterans first. The veterans should come first, and that's my commentary in regards to that, but you can look at our plan and how we include veterans on our website. Okay.
Candidate Pritzker.
Thank you. Well, I have a plan that Juliana and I put out, in fact, to address the big challenges that are faced by veterans who come home from wars, veterans who come home from service, veterans who are already home. I grew up in a home. I mean, my father was a naval veteran, my grandfather a Navy veteran, my cousin founded a military library in Chicago, an Army veteran. I believe strongly that we have to stand up for our veterans and for their dignity, and that's why our plan includes affordable housing and making sure that we're paying for health care benefits that the state provides for our veterans, because there's a federal program, but there's a lot left out. And we need also to make sure that we've got training for those jobs. But here's a really important thing. Many veterans who come home have gotten training in the Army, Navy, or whatever branch, and then they come home and their licenses don't count. Their hours learning that profession doesn't count. They should be given licenses when they come home so they can have jobs when they arrive.
Thank you. Candidate Biss.
We have a sacred responsibility to care for our veterans who put everything at risk. And we're not getting it right. We're not getting it right. And there's a few areas that we need to do better. We need to do better when it comes to health care, including mental health care. And that's why Leticia and I are fighting for universal single-payer health care to make sure everyone has access to the health care they need. The notion that veterans come home with mental illness and aren't cared for properly is obscene. We need access to housing. That means changing laws like lifting the ban on rent control and affordable housing policies and real direct investments in housing opportunities for veterans. We need job training and job opportunities and more incentives for the hiring of veterans. And we need an Illinois Department of Veterans Affairs that's functioning properly, that's held accountable, unlike the awful tragedy that's happened just recently under Bruce Rauner, which he said he wouldn't do anything differently even in retrospect after people died. And to do that, we've got to fund government properly and hold it accountable.
Thank you, Candidate Biss. Now